This is where you'll find out the limitations of men who can't multitask. So let's start with the clicker. So the last time I spoke to you about Megan's Kitchen was back in November last year, where I left you with these 4 points. That there was some fine-tuning of the design was required because we'd got to the point where we weren't quite sure whether the ideas that we had would be acceptable to the diocesan authorities. So there was a bit of negotiating to be done there. We had not got a cost estimate at that point, so we couldn't tell you what sort of money we were looking to spend. We would make an initial approach to the body called the Diocesan Advisory Committee. They are the people who actually approve faculties, and we'd need a faculty for the kitchen. So rather than plough on, spend money on a design, and then turn around and say, no, you can't do that, we thought it was best to get in contact with them early on. And then the next step was the full design and the faculty application. So what's happened since November? One of the questions that arose when we were in that sort of limbo period was that we thought we might need a second sink because health and safety requirements require there to be one sink for washing hands as well as one sink for food preparation. And the local authority health and safety people confirmed that to be the case. So that meant we needed to incorporate another sink in the worktops, which there wasn't a huge amount of worktop space to start with, so that ate into that. So whether we'd have enough worktop to continue. And that left us with 2 options. One was to extend along the west wall, so across the right-hand archway towards the font at the back of the church. And we were led by our architect to believe that that wouldn't be acceptable. And the other was to extend out into the aisle, roughly where the rolling trolley with the plates is at the moment, extend out into the aisle that way. And the diocesan advisor, he's actually the architect, the church, the diocese architect, he said, no, you won't get away with extending the worktop across the archway. You might but have something you could flip up, but you can't have something there permanently. So that confirmed that we'd need to extend out into the aisle. And in a way, that was a good result because that then presents us with a nice surface on which to serve food. It provides us with like a counter, which we think we're going to need for Megan's Kitchen. So having had that sort of advice given to us, we felt comfortable that that was the right thing to do. Now, you're not going to be able to see this, I'm afraid, from where you're sitting, but essentially what we've got now is what I showed you in November. What I've ringed here is the font. Now, there were some scurrilous suggestions that for a second wash basin we could use the font. But we were quickly straightened on that one. So in order to incorporate the kitchen and make the space more usable, we think we're going to have to relocate the font. Now that's on a fairly substantial concrete plinth, which probably doesn't need to move with it, but the idea is to move the font probably somewhere down here, provided the floor's strong enough to take it, otherwise the font will end up in the vestry. So that's something that needs looking into, but the current plans are that we will try and move the font. Ooh, wrong one. That's the extended worktop, ringed in red, and that sticks out a little further than originally planned, but it does have provision for the sink in the corner, as well as providing a useful piece of worktop. And it also has cupboards underneath it, so there's good storage space as well. And then the other change that has been introduced is nothing to do with the kitchen, but we thought it would be a good thing to do, is to replace these curtains with some glazed doors. So there'll be a nice doorway through into the second toilet. So our current kitchenette will become a toilet. So there'll be 2 toilets through here, some nice glazed oak doors here, and the kitchen at the back. And the kitchen will have a hob, an oven, a commercial dishwasher. That's not a great big thing, it's just a fast one. So instead of people going home with trays full of crockery after church events, you can put it all through the dishwasher. Enough storage to keep all the crockery, cutlery and things like that. And 2 sinks. that green line, which was on that drawing but probably hardly visible, that's this green line here. That's actually a vinyl floor which will be laid down on top of the parquet flooring, because the parquet flooring will be useless in a kitchen area. So that will go on top of the parquet flooring. And that's the artist's impression of what the kitchen would look like. And of course the other part of the design was the storage cupboard in the back corner, where we'll hope to put spare chairs and things like that. So you've got storage cupboard here, and the sound desk will move as well. So the sound desk will go roughly where the trolley with the books on is at the moment, at the back of the church. So there's Andy behind his new sound desk. And just in case anybody's concerned, Andy will have an enormous say in what happens with the sound desk. We're not going to do anything without his say-so. And then you've got the kitchen area here, and I'm going to have words with this lady here because she's walking on the parquet floor in stiletto heels, and we can't have that. There is a slight raised area here, and that's actually hiding the plethora of sockets underneath it. There's some concerns as to whether that's a good thing for people with disabilities being able to access the worktop. So there's a bit of fine-tuning to be done, but I think essentially that's what it will look like. It'll look something like that. Whether it has all the way along there, we don't know yet. But we now feel we've got to the point where we've got a design that everybody's happy with. We feel that God's hand's been in it. We've gone round in circles many times and eventually come to what we think is the right conclusion. Now, the big unknown was cost. We've had a quantity surveyor who's evaluated the cost of the materials required and the labour that would be necessary to install the kitchen, and also the services that we needed to supply the kitchen. He's advised us to allow for an increase in materials costs, because anybody who's doing any building work at the moment will know that building material prices are shooting up dramatically at the moment. We need to include the architect's fees. We need to include contingency, because anybody who's done a building project will know it usually costs you a lot more than you think it will. And then there's vicious added tax to add on, which obviously in a project of this size is not insignificant. And the cost of relocating the sound desk. And we think the total figure is likely to be around £80,000. Now, we currently have £24,000 in hand from donations already been made and from Megan's legacy. So we're now looking to raise about £56,000 to pay for the kitchen. And I appreciate that, with dire threats about increasing costs of living and things like that, asking people to give money is at this time is perhaps not the most timely, but we feel this is God's work. This is enabling God to build his kingdom here in this church and in this parish, in this town. And I hope that people will be supportive of the project and be able to give whatever they can to help us finish it. So the next steps. The final tweaks to the design will be necessary. We've got the cost estimate. We need to go out to tender and make sure that the quantity surveyor's estimates are correct. We've made the initial approach to the DAC. Oh, sorry, I've skipped on too far there. And we'll need to do a full faculty application and raise the funds. But the most important thing that we can all do is to pray for Megan's Kitchen. The group that's been working on this has put quite a lot of effort into it, but also we've been very conscious of the need to pray all the time to make sure that we are discerning God's will, and it's not just a sort of a pipe dream of ours, that it really is something that God wants here to help build his kingdom. And I just encourage you all to pray about Megan's Kitchen going forward, and hope that we can complete the project in a timely fashion and be able to offer a wonderful new facility to our community and to our parishioners. That's all I had to say. And if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask. Carol?
You've probably told us this before, but is it going to be sort of open and visible all the time, or is it any sense closed off, or covers over the sinks or things like that?
there was a possibility of having shutters that would go across the. Sorry, I'll get back into Andy's vision here. That's about right. We could have the whole thing closed off, but I think we decided we didn't need to do that. What we will need to do is to make sure that when the kitchen's not in use, that people can't, particularly children, can't go in there and hurt themselves. What we will do is make sure that the doors on the cupboards and all the woodwork is matching of the oak we've got in our rolling cupboard, so it should all match in. And so the answer to your question is no, it won't be enclosed, but it will be locked. Well, it won't be locked away, but it will be secured, so young fingers can't hurt themselves.